one, it's interesting because it's written with no definitions. It's intentionally vague and deceptive. And the people give tens of millions of dollars from out-of-state interests, very highly ideological or left interests, and the abortion industry, which wants to make money off this amendment if it passes, right. And they will make a lot of money off of it, unfortunately. They have not wanted to define these terms, and then they're running ads. Their whole campaign that they're running to say vote for it has nothing to do with the actual amendment. All they're doing is lying about Florida policies and laws about respecting life, both the life of the mother and health of the mother, of course, but also the life of the child. And so it's lie, 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 lie. Why aren't they happy about what their amendment would do? Why aren't they out there talking about what all these terms mean? Why aren't they out there running ads about what it would actually mean in practice? And I think the reason is because when people actually peel back the onion and see what it is, they don't like it. And it loses a lot of support the more people are informed about it. So what are some of the things that this amendment does? This amendment, if adopted, it would be the first amendment in the history of the state of Florida to actually repeal a right. It will repeal the right of a parent to have to provide consent before their child undergoes an abortion. Right now in Florida, we have parental consent, not just for abortion, but for anything involving medical with the minor. They can't give your kid an aspirin unless you consent. And that's the way it should be for parents. And yet, this amendment would permanently take this one issue and say the parents do not have the right to be in that decision-making process or to provide consent. So everything else would be parental consent except for this. And obviously, when you're talking about abortion, that's a major, major procedure to have to undergo. And of course, the parents need to have the right to provide that authorization just like they would on anything else. Now, what this amendment does, it gives a little bait and switch. There's a provision on there that says, well, nothing in the amendment will infringe on the legislature's right to require parental notification. But that's not the same as consent. That's deliberate that they're doing that. Notification means send a postcard, parent knows this is happening, but the parent can't stop it. The parent doesn't have the authorization, is not required to provide authorization. So it is repealing the right of a parent. That would be in the Constitution, and that means you would never, as a parent, get that right back. We fought very hard to protect parents' rights in this state across the board. When it comes to medical, education, you name it, we want parents to be able to exercise those responsibilities. This would peel that back. And that's very, very troubling. And it's something that I know most people don't think is the right thing to do. And that's bad. But what's even worse is, because, you have people, when you're talking about right to life, there's some people that very much believe in right to life. There's some people that don't. They're just, that's not where they're at in terms of their worldview and their politics. And there are people that have been, supportive of abortion, but they say, it's not a good thing. They don't want a lot of it. They want it to be rare, but ultimately they don't support legal protections for unborn, sometimes at any stage of the pregnancy, because they say it really should just be decided between the mother and the doctor. And you'll hear that a lot. It's interesting and actually very troubling that this amendment cuts doctors out. It says that an abortion can be green-lit all the way to the moment of birth by a, quote, healthcare provider. That's the term that they used. Well, healthcare provider is not the same as a licensed physician. Florida law has always required that licensed physicians be the ones to be involved and perform or not perform these procedures. Some of them are very, very high risk. There's a lot of complications that can happen, and they're saying healthcare provider. So you will have non-medical doctors doing this. I don't know that there's any other state that has ever gone down that road. So to displace the role that physicians have always played in the law, and this is permanent. When you do it in the Constitution, it's, oh, well, the legislature can just change. You can't change once it's in the Constitution. So when it's in the Constitution, if it says healthcare provider, the legislature can't come in and pass a statute to say, well, actually, all that only means licensed physicians. Because someone that's not a licensed physician that wants to open up an abortion clinic, they will sue and they will say, here's what the Constitution says. I am a healthcare provider. I mean, you're going to have people that are clerks at Planned Parenthood. All these things can qualify. And there's no definition of that in the amendment. So this is a radical change to actually displace the role of physicians when it comes to these procedures. I don't think very many people think that's possibly a good idea, especially people who advocate for abortion and always talk about the physician and the mother. This will greenlight abortions with physicians not even being involved at all. And that's very dangerous, and that's very bad. It's also very bad, this amendment, if passed, it's going to end up being very bad for taxpayers. And the reason is they've done a similar thing in Michigan and may cause more expenses because potential lawsuits that would require that. So it does alert the voter to that. The actual text doesn't say anything about it. What they did in Michigan, it passed and went in and sued and said, under this constitutional provision, the government has to use tax dollars to fund these abortions. And so they're now trying to get, as a matter of constitutional adjudication in the courts, mandated taxpayer funding of abortions. And so that will happen here if it passes. They will beat a door to the courthouse, and they always find a liberal judge, and they will say, Your Honor, this requires that the taxpayers fund. And so that is like, there's people that are on different sides of right to life when it comes to this issue. I don't think very many people on either side want taxpayers to be forced to fund it. That is not right, and yet that is something that is a very real possibility. They are suing in Michigan to do this. Same groups are behind this. They will sue here in Florida if it passes. You also have a lack of definition. So what they say is that there's nothing you can do to prevent abortion through viability. They don't define what that means in there. I can tell you what they would push for it to be would be you would be able to go in 6 months in for no reason at all and abort a baby. Fully formed, can feel pain, beating heart. You see on the ultrasound the image. And for no reason, nothing involving the life or health of the mother, that would be a constitutional right. And those abortions are dismemberment abortions, where they actually have to rip the baby's limbs limb from limb and do it. And that would be a part of Florida's Constitution mandating that happen. And that's just the minimum that they would accept under that. They don't define that for you because I think they know if they defined it the way they want it to be, that it would be very unpopular when people start to think about, well, wait a minute, that is because I think most people on this pro-life or not do agree there needs to be some limit. It can't just have any time that there's no rights at all for that life. But here's the thing. That's an important debate to have. They didn't define it. I think it would mandate things that are very troubling for most people in the state. But in some respects, if you continue reading in the amendment, they provide an exception even to that effectively swallows the rule. Because what they say is that you can do an abortion if a healthcare provider decides it's necessary to protect the patient's health. Problem is, well, one, as we said, they don't define health. So what does that mean? Well, in Florida, there are exceptions for life and health, but the health is defined for things that, because ultimately that's the primary patient that a doctor is going to attend to is the mother. So of course you're going to do things to treat. This, though, is so open-ended that it would basically allow a non-physician to green light an abortion all the way up until birth for basically any reason. because with no definitions, they can figure out and say what they want to say. And that would make Florida one of the most radical abortion regimes, not just anywhere in the U.S., but anywhere in the world, if that were to be something that would be done. Because there are states, much as the media, they hate when you bring this up because they know it's bad. There are some of these states that do have abortion through 9 months. Colorado's one, Minnesota's another, and that can just be done. And there are late-term abortions that happen in this country. It's not the norm. It is a small percentage, but it's still tens of thousands a year nationwide. The majority of those late-term abortions are purely for elective reasons. They are not for the life or major health of the mother. And people will, some of these folks will acknowledge that. The media hates when you bring that up because it's really bad, but it is true. But even in those regimes that have that, I don't think they have it to where a physician can be displaced. I don't think they say healthcare provider can do this, even in states like Colorado and Minnesota, which are very, very extreme on that side. So I think Florida would probably stand alone if this were to pass, with just how crazy it would be, given that you're combining effectively no limits with allowing that to be done without physicians involved at all. Not something you want in your Constitution. And the thing is if you read the way it's written, it says, nothing can delay or do anything. Privileges and proximity requirements to be near a hospital so that an admitted physician can provide immediate treatment if something goes wrong when performing an abortion. We have certain medical requirements. We have certain waiting periods. We have certain required in-person counseling. All these things would be tossed totally out the window. It would be very difficult to regulate and provide some structure to this because anything you do would effectively cause a delay because you have to comply with these things. And one of the things that I think needs to be said too is we don't know what this would mean for babies that survive an abortion, but if you look, Minnesota, because this is an issue in this VP debate, they had, like Florida does, a requirement that if a baby survives an abortion attempt, that you provide life-saving treatment to the baby. And we've all probably met some of these folks who've survived abortions. They're great people, and yet there was a duty to care, so they were saved. Minnesota, they had a provision to repeal that, and they repealed it. So if somebody survives an abortion attempt, they do not, in Minnesota, there's no duty to care to provide life-saving treatment. I think that's horrific that you would do that. That could potentially impact what is here in Amendment 4. So there's a lot in this that is not something that most people would find acceptable. And regardless of even what the opinion on it is, these are things that are just flat out wrong to put in a constitution. It's not good policy. It doesn't reflect, I think, the values that people hold. And it's not something that's going to set the state up for success. Now, they are not talking about any of that, understandably. And so what they're doing is they're spending huge amounts of money to basically lie about Florida law and acting like somehow Florida law. So what they're running on are basically things that the law in Florida is not doing. And it's kind of just like this kabuki dance where they're saying this, but none of it's true. So therefore vote for their amendment that they won't define as deceptive. No, it doesn't make sense. So here's where we are in Florida. Under Florida law that was enacted by the Florida legislature, abortions are permitted until a fetal heartbeat is detected. But abortions, there are exceptions when you have rape, incest, human trafficking, and of course when the child has a fetal abnormality. And then of course a miscarriage is not an abortion. And so people have 100% right, to have health care in those circumstances. And abortions, there's always exceptions to protect both the life and health of the mothers in the state of Florida. That's just the law. It's inconvenient for these folks that that's the law. They don't want that to be the law because they want to be able to run their messaging focusing on things the Florida law doesn't do, because if they couldn't do that, they'd have to actually defend what they're trying to do. But that is just the reality. And there's nothing in Florida law that would ever prevent any woman from receiving any type of life-saving treatment if the life is jeopardized by a pregnancy. In fact, it would be malpractice not to treat a woman if a physician did it. So some of these physicians go on these commercials, prevents me from doing that. If that's how you're behaving, you are committing medical malpractice. You will be subject to lawsuit, and you should lose your medical license, quite frankly. I mean, if you don't know the law, so if any doctor out there tells you anything different, I encourage you to find a different doctor because the one you're getting is putting politics ahead of your health, and that is wrong to do. So we're really grateful to have all these great people here. You're going to hear from some of them about their views from a medical perspective on this proposed amendment. And just keep in mind all the things that they won't tell you about it, that if you drill down, you get to see it. None of fixing the problems is basically zero. Constitutional amendment is different. You can have the legislature pass legislation on any subject. And if you don't like it, there's elections every 2 years. You could put someone else in to do some of that. That's not what we're talking about with a constitutional amendment. It trumps any laws that would be passed by your elected representatives, and it would basically be permanent fixture of Florida going forward. Okay, we're going to hear from Dr. Anna Verdeja. So where's Anna? Go ahead.
And thank you for the privilege of having me here today to discuss such a crucial topic, Amendment 4, and the consequences that this will bring to our women and our babies in Florida. I'm Dr. Anna Verdeja. I'm a board-certified OBGYN, and I've been practicing in Plant City, Florida for the past 24 years. I'm speaking on my own behalf, and I want to personally thank you, Ron DeSantis, for going above and beyond the call of duty to inform our constituents how crucial it is to be well informed about the truth of this amendment. Amen. He has been all over the state trying to educate our communities about the horrible consequences to our women, our families, and our states if this amendment makes it into our Florida Constitution. He has exhausted all possible resources to stop the amendment, but the opposition has been brutally defiant. It reminds me of the story of David and Goliath. And Governor, you are the David of the story. Fighting for the end, and I know in God's timing, the truth will prevail.
Yes.
To go and vote against the amendment.
Yes.
It is very important that our communities know how the doctors feel about the content of this amendment and why we are against it. Our coalition of Florida physicians against Amendment 4 has collected over 700 signatures across the state of doctors that have united to voice the grave concern. As part of this coalition, I'm here to tell you all about it. As Governor DeSantis mentioned earlier, Amendment 4 was written in very vague language and without any definition. And what that brings is abortion at any time of the pregnancy, up to 40 weeks of pregnancy, and for any reason, abortion without us doctors, and abortion without parental consent. In our state, we have existing laws in place that offer choice of abortion to the women facing difficult pregnancies due to rape, incest, and human trafficking. They also allow us doctors to act in the event of a woman's life at risk and save her without hesitation. Unfortunately, All the ads in favor of Amendment 4 are full of lies and misleading information. They have created confusion even among medical professionals. Don't fall for the scare tactics. Our present abortion law protects the life of the vulnerable woman seeking abortion. Amendment 4 eliminates all those protections. As a physician who took an oath to do no harm, there is no way that I could say yes to this amendment. So I beg you, for the sake of our vulnerable women and our babies, please vote no on Amendment 4. Familias hispanas, humildemente les pido que voten no en esta tan peligrosa enmienda. Esta enmienda permitirá abortos hasta las 40 semanas de embarazo y por cualquier razón. También permitirá que personas que no son médicos hagan abortos sin poder atender las posibles complicaciones de un aborto. Esta enmienda también eliminará el permiso de los padres de niñas menores de edad que buscan hacerse un aborto. Desgraciadamente, los anuncios que han salido recientemente a favor de la enmienda están llenos de mentiras y de información incorrecta. No se dejen engañar por el miedo que han creado estos anuncios. Las leyes existen en el presente que protegen la vida de la mujer que se somete a un aborto. La enmienda 4 las elimina por completo. La enmienda 4 no ofrece nada para la salud de las mujeres ni de nuestras hijas. Debemos actuar con valentía y proteger a nuestras mujeres y a sus bebés. Les pido que voten no en enmienda 4.
Okay, Dr. Kimberly Materis.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to address my fellow Floridians regarding the deceptive Amendment 4. Thank you, Governor DeSantis, for your tireless work and efforts to defeat Amendment 4. Thank you for defending women, life, families, and the unborn in our great state. I am Dr. Kim Fortin-Harris, a board-certified OBGYN practicing in Florida for the last 33 years and counting. Taking care of women of all ages and working as the medical director for 3 pregnancy centers here also in Central Florida. Based on my professional relationships with patients and my fellow colleagues and my personal interactions in my community, I know how women and men in our state feel about abortion. When it comes to terminating a pregnancy, there are very widely differing views. There are Floridians, goodness gracious, can't say it. There are Floridians who are firmly pro-life. We all know these people. There are Floridians that are firmly pro-life but also believe in exceptions for rape, incest, sex trafficking. And then we have the group of Floridians that are firmly pro-choice. Well, these pro-choice advocates have widely differing views on the restrictions for abortion and the limits for abortion, and are reflected in our past and current state laws. But never, not even one time in all of my years of practice have I heard a single person, neither female nor male, say that they think abortion is in the late stage of pregnancy, in the 3rd trimester, or even up to birth would be a good idea and they approve of it. Never. In my experience of taking care of women, I've never heard a single Floridian support abortion on demand, abortion at any gestation, abortion without the consent of a parent for their minor daughter. And indeed, this is exactly what Amendment 4 would put into place. Most Floridians, when presented with these realities, are horrified. They know they're not stupid. They understand what a 3rd-term abortion means. They understand dismemberment procedure. They understand that the baby is not anesthetized. This is terrible. It's awful. And if they really truly told us what the amendment meant, none of us would ever vote yes. So in terms of voting on Amendment 4, we should all carefully read and understand the amendment, what it says and what it doesn't say, and the radical implications our speakers have presented. Educate yourself on the amendment. Don't rely on ads that are filled with flat-out lies, so egregious and inflammatory as to incite a public reaction, sending Floridians to the polls with no accurate information. Most of the ads seen on TV or in social media platforms don't even mention the amendment itself. Instead, they present false statements about our current state law. It was so egregious that our state Surgeon General had to send out a one-page email addressed to all practicing physicians in the state of Florida, correcting the misinformation widely publicized on social media and in television ads. And you would think, well, that would be the end of that. Well, we won't see any more false ads. No, it just persists. They keep churning them out, trying to stir up emotion. For myself, as a pro-life obstetrician gynecologist, I will be voting no. I also believe that my fellow Floridians will vote no because they're not in favor of abortion without some form of limitation. The amendment is strictly a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's going around masquerading as something that it is not. It was intentionally written to be deceptive, and we don't like to be lied to in Florida. No way.
No way.
Just work for that. It is too extreme, too radical, and simply goes too far. Now, my pro-choice people, I want you to pay close attention. A no vote does not mean that you are no longer pro-choice. It does not. It simply means that you are opposed to the way the amendment is written. All of us here on stage and all of you want safe medical care for all women in our state. Amendment 4 does not provide this and is bad for Florida. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Richard Sandler.
The governor nailed it, huh?
Yes. Right.
And the rest of us are here not just as window dressing,
Amen.
but to say, even though the governor is a politician, he's speaking truth on this one. And he speaks truth at the forward. All right, greetings to each of you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to my colleagues and to the 700 or so professionals that have signed our declaration saying Amendment 4 is lousy healthcare. Thank you to our governor, who does the right thing, even when it's hard. My name is Dr. Richard Sandler. I'm a pediatrician for over 40 years. And I have the honor of serving as the co-chair of our physician coalition that says that Amendment 4 is bad for women. That's bad health care. It's bad for children. It's bad for families. Now, we are the zone that we do every day, that we train for, to stand up, because this is too important. And because the other side is using medical arguments to say, hey, vote for this. Not a different spin. First is the of parental consent. Really bad idea. In my long career as a pediatrician and as a father and as a grandfather, I've learned, and as I reflect on my own teenage years, I reflect on the unequivocal fact that teenagers, as the poet Homer said, youth is quick in feeling but weak in judgment. No doctor would do a surgical procedure of any kind or give medication. Our laws reflect it. We don't allow kids to buy guns. We don't allow kids 12-year-olds to drive cars. If a minor wants an ear piercing, you've got to get parental consent. Why? Because we know their judgment is a problem. And they deserve and need the protection of their families. Amendment 4 removes parental consent. And here's an important point, because we could just say, okay, the parents aren't going to be involved. Maybe they'll make the wrong choice. But there's more to this. And I want you to focus on human trafficking and child abuse and sexual abuse. And this is a gift to each of those people who are doing very bad things. Here's the 12-year-old girl. She wants an abortion. The abortion goes forward. No questions are asked. We're better than that. Second, late-term abortions. In the presidential debate, this came up. Oh, we don't do those. Really? We do those. So there's a group called the Guttmacher Institute, which is a pro-abortion think tank. And they said that last year there was 1,033,000. It's hard to get a mind around that. Abortions in the United States last year.
No.
And our CDC, although they're a little sullied in my mind, and I know in the governor's mind, says that about 7% of abortions are later term abortions. Well, 7% of a very large number is still a major number.
Mm-hmm.
The math is something like 72,000 later term abortions each year.
Mm-hmm.
And as the governor said, and as Tammy said, that means going in there with a clamp and literally pulling off the legs and arms of a pain-capable child,
Jesus.
and then crushing the head so you can deliver the body. I'm sorry that this is hard to imagine, and it's graphic and it's upsetting, but it is the fact. We have to deal with the facts, and we're better than that. And Amendment 4 would allow that to go forward. It's not okay. Well, the third point, there should be universal condemnation of Amendment 4. Some of my colleagues have made reference to this. Why? Because very few of our pro-choice friends are in favor of abortion until birth. Very few are in favor of removing parental consent. Some of our friends are not fond of the current Heartbeat Protection Act. I understand that. We can have differences of opinion. But this is not the way to address whatever differences you might have with that piece of legislation. The caring physicians before you and the 700 or so who have signed our declaration, all religions or no religion, pro-life and yes, pro-choice, should be united in opposition to Amendment 4. And finally, on a personal note. So I used to be pro-choice. I didn't know any better. And as a doctor, I'm taking care of little babies. Little babies who can breathe and react, and they're little human beings. And you love them as soon as you're with them. And those little babies, premature babies, would be fair game to be killed brutally. It's not okay.
No.
We shouldn't be doing that. I urge my pro-choice friends and colleagues to join me in voting against Amendment 4. As a fellow physician emphasized, we doctors are trying to save lives. They are trying to save a business. Thank you.
Thanks to the doctors for being here. Thanks for standing up for honesty. And throughout this blizzard of lies, telling the truth. We should live not by lies. The truth will set us free.
Amen.
Let's be honest about what's at stake here. Let's be honest about what's currently in Florida law. But the most important thing is, let's be honest about what Amendment 4 would mean if that were ensconced in our Constitution forever. It would be bad. They didn't provide definitions for you on what's in the amendment. They didn't provide any meaningful limitations to restrict abortion at any point throughout a pregnancy. They didn't provide you with a guarantee that you'd have physicians that would be the ones that would be overseeing this. And of course, they put up huge now roadblocks to basic parenting by eliminating and repealing the parental consent that is currently a part of Florida law. So for all those reasons, yes, if you're pro-life, this is an easy no. But honestly, if you're not, this is just bad policy. This is about people that are trying to save a business model at the expense of the health and well-being of people in this state. And so on either side of that issue, this is a bad amendment. It's deceptive, it's vague, that was intentional. They're not defining it, and they're doing a lot of things that'll have a lot of problems. So for all the reasons that these doctors said, listen to what they have to say, and just vote no on this thing so we don't have to see all these problems that will inevitably arise if this thing were to pass. Thank you. God bless everybody.